Mr. Femi Adesina is a special advisor to the President on media and publicity. He joins us tonight on the program from our Abuja studio. Good evening and thank you for joining us on Sunday Politics. I mean, it's not news that we're faced with a security challenge, that we're fighting on various fronts. But let me begin by asking you, just what is the President's thinking at this time regarding the security situation in the country?
Thank you. Good evening. You said in your intro that the country was faced with many challenges and security is one of them, and that is quite true. You must also have listened to the president on Thursday after those schoolboys in Katsina were retrieved. And he said, yes, security was crucial, and he was concerned about the security situation in the country, and the government will continue to work at it. Security is paramount, is central to every other thing. Economic development, socio-political development, every other thing will all revolve around security. So the government is aware of that, and it is work in progress.
Well, following the release or the rescue, whichever one, of those boys, the government took credit, as you would expect, and spoke highly about the security agencies, the government's resolve to fight insecurity. That was the term that was used. So in that light also, we've seen that there are security challenges. Is the government also taking responsibility for those failures in securing the nation?
It goes without saying. It really goes without saying, because our Constitution says that the security of lives and property is the responsibility of government. So when we succeed, government takes the credit. When things fall short, of course, government is also responsible. It goes without saying that the good and the bad are both taken by government as they come.
Just to be clear, is the president, the government admitting failure regarding securing lives and property and ensuring welfare?
Well, there's no government that does not fail. All over the world. There are breaches everywhere, all over the world. There is no government that does not fail at one time or the other. Even at the individual level, I'm sure one time or the other we have failed before. But did we remain down? No. My enemy rejoice not over me if I fall. If I fall, I'll rise again. So there are times of falling and there are times of rising. When government fails at certain points, it takes responsibilities, it appraises what has happened, it learns lessons from it, and it moves on.
Well, Mr. Adesina, I'm still trying to get this clear, because my question was quite simple. A yes or no question. Is the government admitting failure? That was what I asked. So I'm not talking about other governments. I'm talking about this government in particular. Is the government admitting failure in that regard?
That would not be a fair question. It would not be a fair question at all. And if you are a citizen, bona fide citizen of this country, you will not be talking of failures. Rather, you will be applauding successes. And where there are failures, government should learn from it, tighten the situation, and move on. We don't have to dwell on failures. No, no. We just learn lessons from failures and we move on.
Mr. Adesina, if you had answered my question, which was straightforward, I wouldn't have to ask it over and over again, so we can move on to other issues. You have said, yes, the government can take the credit for the successes. And I asked about the failures, and I'm just asking straight and clear, is the government admitting failure?
I'm sure in your life at a certain time before you have failed. Now, did you dwell on your failure, or you dusted yourself up and moved on? You don't dwell in failure. That's why I quoted that scripture I said earlier. My enemy rejoice not over me if I fall. If I fall, I'll rise again. So at one time or the other, at the individual level, at the national level, at the state level, at the corporate level, there are failures. But we don't dwell on those failures. We learn from them and we move on. So that your question is neither here nor there.
Well, it was clear. It was a yes or no question, Mr. Adesina. But it's important to actually know where we are so we can know how much
It could be your
distance
impression
we
that it
have.
was yes or no.
Well, Mr. Adesina, it was a yes or no question. But let's talk about, other issues, because it's important to know where we are right now so we can understand how to move on from there. And let me ask you, what is the target really? What is this government's target regarding security? What is your minimum standard? How do you measure whether you have done well or not when it comes to securing this nation?
Well, you observe that in 2015, when this government was campaigning, it campaigned on a tripod. And in that order, when the president himself will recount it, he lists it in this order. We will secure the country. We will revive the economy. And we will fight corruption. It's in that order. So security is always number one. The president keeps saying that you cannot manage a country that you have not secured. You cannot. So you must first secure a country before you can manage it effectively. And when the government was going to campaign, the government and the party were going to campaign for election in 2019, those three priorities came up again in that same order: security, revive the economy, and fight corruption. So it shows you where security is in the pecking order for this government.
Right. So the question I asked again is, so how does the government measure its performance in that sense? So what is the minimum standard? What are we trying to achieve? I think that's quite clear. What security situation are we trying to achieve in this country? So everybody is at least on the same page.
There's a popular saying that what is not measured does not get done. So it shows you that when the government says we want to secure the country, there are certain indices it will love to see. It will love to see that kidnappings are reduced to the barest minimum, if not completely eradicated. It will love to see insurgency come to an end. It will love to see banditry completely eradicated. It will love to see armed robbery reduced to a minimum. So it's so easy to measure security successes. You measure it against what the challenges are and what are the things you have recorded.
Right. Well, in the aftermath of that kidnapping and the eventual release, a statement was put out from the president asking Nigerians, in fact, let me just quote, "I ask Nigerians to be patient and fair to us as we deal with the challenges of security, the economy, and corruption. We will not relent." But, the part I'd like you to just help clear up is the patience part. Just how long is this government asking Nigerians to be patient for? Because there needs to be a timeline to achieving goals. I know you appreciate that. So just how long is this government asking for?
That patience will never run out. It should never run out. Throughout the life of this government, in the life of succeeding government, in the life of all governments to come, the citizenry will have to be patient with government at any given time. Because challenges are not something you just wave a magic wand and they disappear. No. Challenges will always be there. You will succeed up to a certain level at some times. At some times, you may not succeed too much. Challenges will always be there. So the citizenry must always be patient with government. That is what that statement simply meant.
So there's no timeline to this patience. It just simply says, well, even if it takes us 3 years or more, just be patient. Am I right?
Yes, it is said that patience is a conquering virtue. If you are patient, eventually you will conquer. Patience must be elastic. It must be elastic. It is not something that you will get to a point and you say, well, patience has run out. It doesn't work like that. Patience must be a continuous thing. Well,
Mr. Adesina, you do know that there's that expression that people run out of patience, which is what you just used. But while that patience lasts, lives are being lost. I mean, I'll chronicle some of the security issues we've had just in this past 3 days for you in a moment. But still on that issue of patience, because a lot of Nigerians have been patient with this government from 2015 up till this moment. And they just want to know, just how long do you want us to wait for? And you know that a goal without a timeline is not really a goal. So again, is there a timeline to this? Or, like you said, people should just keep waiting?
No, you make it sound as if when the citizenry is patient, then it is doing government a favor. No, it is not like that. It's our country. It's a symbiotic thing between the citizenry and the government. It's not that the citizenry is doing government a favor by being patient. No, it is that we are doing the right thing in our country, for our country, when we show patience and understanding to government. It's in our collective interest.
You know that the responsibility and purpose of government is to ensure security and welfare of citizens. It doesn't say the other way around, the responsibility and purpose of the people. It's the government. So the people actually being patient. That's why the government asks for patience, because it needs people to be patient. And again, I know you appreciate this. I know you gauge opinions of Nigerians, and they are watching tonight just to get a sense of this is what we're doing, this is how long it will take from the government. So maybe another chance to ask you, how long?
No. There are certain things in which you don't have control of all the variables. If you don't have control of all the variables, you don't then begin to give timeline. And security is not something that you will give a timeline that by this time or this time or this time, we will accomplish this. All over the world, security is a continuous thing. It's a continuous thing. Even the most advanced countries in terms of security and equipment and security agencies' performance and all that, they still are working at it. So that is why a government cannot say, by this time we will accomplish this, we will accomplish this. It's a continuous process. All that matters is that you work at it, you stay on it.
Well, you said that there's some variables that are not in the control of government. I believe that's the context you were speaking. So help Nigerians understand, what are those variables that are out of your hand?
You know, for instance, you look at the entire Sahel region, from Mauritania to Burkina Faso to Mali to Niger to Nigeria. See all that is happening in terms of armed banditry, in terms of killers. Many times the president has explained these things, that a lot of the people that Gaddafi used to entrench himself in government for over 42 years were taught nothing but to shoot and kill. And then when Gaddafi fell, they dispersed with their weapons. And they are all over the Sahel, causing mayhem, killings, because that's the only thing they need to do. And it's not peculiar to Nigeria. It's along the entire belt. So it is not within the control of the government totally. And it is not peculiar to Nigeria alone. Small arms are everywhere in this country, small arms. How do you begin to mop up those small arms? Remember what happened during the NSAS campaign? You know how many police stations were invaded? You know how many arms and ammunition ended in wrong hands? So these are some of the challenges that come up from time to time. Therefore, until those challenges are surmounted in one way or the other, you cannot just pontificate and say, at a time like this, we will stop this. All that matters is continue to work at it.
Okay, I'd like you to listen to a statement. We had an interview, a conversation with the co-convener of Bring Back Our Girls, the former minister in Nigeria, and she spoke about the security situation, especially the abduction and eventual release of the Kankara boys. I'd like you to take a listen to some of the issues you raised and get your response to it.
Why do we find comfort in pretending that a lie is true and that truth is lie? I'm not going to be part of it. I'm sorry.
Well,
the government has to explain to us what happened on the Kankara matter. They must tell us what happened. They haven't told us. There is too much murkiness around this. There's a lot of monkey business that they need to explain to us. Is this government trying to shore up its credibility by pretending that an abduction happened and then they got the children back? This would be too, heinous a thing to do to young children.
Well, Mr. Adesina, you listened to her raising some issues, and she's not the only one who has spoken about that. So let me get your response to those points she made.
Well, Mrs. Obieze-Kosili is just one person. She has a right to her opinion. It doesn't make her opinion the gospel truth, but she has a right to it. If you have also noticed on social media, there has been a juxtaposition of what she said before those boys were rescued, believing that there was an abduction. Now, because government recorded a success, suddenly she didn't believe again. She has a right to it. And anybody who is of that same mind, what I'll just tell them is that, well, a fair mind, a decent mind believes all things. Anybody that chooses not to believe, the onus of proof is on that person.
Is this government worried about its credibility? Because she also pointed that out.
No. Every government must seek to preserve the credibility that got it into power. This government remains credible. It remains credible. Some people will want to tarnish the credibility of the government. But I think it will just be a losing battle, because this government remains credible to Nigerians that can discern, not those who have closed their minds, not those who have ossified minds. Those who have open minds know that this is a credible government. It continues to deal with Nigerians honestly. It continues to do things to the best of its ability. Anybody that will not believe has a right not to believe.
You know, I would have been shocked, really, if you had said that this government had issues with its credibility. I mean, you'll definitely speak very highly of the government. But regarding the issue, you talked about timelines. I recall when the president came into power in 2015, and you talked about the campaign promises. Quite simple: security, the economy, and fight against corruption. And just months after he was sworn in, he had a meeting with service chiefs. And, well, here's the thing, we're due for a break in a minute, but I'd like to get your beginning response before we go for that break. And this is what the president says. He said, you need to team up with other stakeholders to come with a well-coordinated joint effort, which will bring a desired end to these insurgencies within 3 months. Now, that was the president giving a timeline to ending insurgency. Oh, well, we have to go on a break because of our time. But when I return from this break, I'd like to get your response to that, because I was the president given a timeline. It's not just 3 months after that. It is over 5 months. So we'll go on this break, Mr. Adesina. And when we return, we'll get your response to issues about setting a timeline. So please join us again. Welcome back to the program. Let's rejoin Mr. Femi Adesina, special advisor to the president on media and publicity. Thank you for your patience on the program. So I set that background before we went at break, reminding you that the president has set timelines in the past, contrary to what you said about not setting timelines regarding ending security in the country. So how is that different from now?
No, they're not the same thing. Earlier, we were talking about the whole gamut of insecurity. Everything: banditry, insurgency, kidnappings, armed robbery, communal clashes. And I told you that it would be difficult to set a timeline when all these things will be accomplished. I said it will have to be work in progress. Even the best countries in the world in terms of security still remains work in progress. Now, when the president gave a timeline for insurgency to end, it was also good. Because anything you do in life, if you don't keep a certain target ahead of you, it may be difficult for you to accomplish it. It's like when the prophet said, write the vision upon a table and make it plain, so that he that reads it can run with it. If there was no vision, nothing written, nothing made plain, what do you run with? So when he told the military, end this thing in 3 months. It was very good. It was a target, it was a timeline, which the military tried to meet then. Because you will see that at the end of that period was when we also had the saying that the insurgency had been technically defeated. Technically defeated. In that, to a large extent, its back was broken. Before then, the insurgents would seize territories, seize lands, hoist their flags, chase emirs from their palaces, begin to administer those territories and all that. After that period, it was not happening again. Hence the saying that it was technically defeated. But then we know that after that technical defeat, a mopping up process was needed. And that mopping up process was as important as the time of the shooting war itself. So we are still in that time of mopping up. You can't compare what is happening now to what was happening at a certain time. Things are a lot better. Ask those in the Northeast. They will tell you that things are a lot better. But is it over? No, it is not over. Shakespeare said, we have only scourged the snake and we have not killed it. The snake is scourged, but it needs to be decapitated eventually.
Well, Mr. Adesina, on Thursday, bandits attacked the convoy of the Emir of Kora Namoda along Zaria-Funtua Road, killing 3 policemen and 5 others. That was on Thursday. On Friday, residents of Maiduguri were thrown into panic following the killing and abduction of several travelers along the Maiduguri-Damaturu Expressway in Borno State. That's on Friday. On the same day, a female suicide bomber on the night of Friday reportedly infiltrated Kaimari, which is a remote village in Borno State, instantly killing herself and 2 men as her bomb detonated. On Saturday, that's the next day, 7 people were killed in what security operatives described as reprisal attacks in Kara and Lere local government areas of Kaduna State. But the sad part was just a few days earlier, I think 2 days after or before that, 7 people had been killed. That's on Saturday. Also on that same Saturday, the Edo State Head of Service, Anthony Okungbowa, was kidnapped in the evening of that Saturday. Today, Sunday, which is meant to be a day of rest, right? Gunmen stormed Madaka village in Rafi local government area of Niger State, killing at least 3 people. I just went back 3 days, and I didn't even chronicle all the security incidents that happened in just the space of those 3 days. So in that light, would you still say things are better?
Yes, because there are times, a week, 2 weeks, even a month, you don't have all these things happening. There was a time in the immediate past when they happened daily, several times. You talked of one bombing within those 3 or 4 days. There was a time in this country when bombs went off like firecrackers every day. There could be 5, 6 bombings in one day. Now, you can have 2, 3 months with no single case of bombing. Let's be thankful for small masses. Any masses we receive, let's be thankful for it. And let's not dwell on negatives alone. Life is taking the rough and the smooth together. So we see times when things go on for days, for weeks, with no negative development. Let us emphasize those ones. Not when you have 3 days, 4 days, when they come together like that. And then you want to make it appear as if that is the constant in the country. We know that that is not the constant. There are challenges, they are there, but that is not the constant in the country.
Well, Mr. Adesina, the question now will be, was this the promise that this government presented to Nigerians? Was it, well, we'll have security challenges, okay? It won't be constant, but we'll have once, and of course, I just detailed about 6 different attacks. Was this kind of promise, was this the promise that this government gave to Nigerians before coming into government?
Yes, before coming into government, they were not a government then. They were aspiring to go into government. So when they were campaigning, they said, yes, we will secure the country. And when they were campaigning again in 2019, security still remained number 1. So that shows that the government appreciates that security is an issue in the country, and it will stay under security till things get better. Just on Thursday, the president also said the security agencies could do better. So that means he has what he wants to see in the country concerning security. And until we get to that point, he wouldn't say no, he wouldn't say the job is accomplished.
Okay, Mr. Adesina, just a moment. We're being joined by Mr. Kabiru Adamu, who is a security expert. He joins us virtually this evening just to get another opinion to the security situation in the country. Well, thank you for joining us on Sunday Politics. I believe you have listened to Mr. Adesina's submission, his, well, sort of telling us how he thinks the government has fared regarding security. But from where you sit, really, I just detailed some of the attacks we had in recent times. How would you rate the government?
Well, the government made a promise to secure lives and property. And I think going by the last statement by President Buhari from Adesina, when he met the Kankara boys, he reiterated that promise. Now, the interpretation of the success of the government would be determined by where you are and how you've been impacted by security. I know the people in the Northeast, as an example, would praise to a larger extent some of the successes of the Buhari administration. However, in the Northwest, unfortunately, the banditry issue has grown under the administration. So it depends on where you are in the country. On the whole, however, I would say there has been successes here and there, but unfortunately, again, there have been some decline in terms of performances in security in other aspects.
What would you say is the reason for this decline?
Several reasons. In terms of policy, I would commend hugely the Buhari administration. There are several policy developments that the Buhari administration has introduced that previous governments have never even bothered to look at in the area of security. The Police Act 2020 is an example. We were using a police act that was handed over to us really by our colonial masters, as it were, forgive my use of that language, that really lacked any civil liberties in it. But then this administration has come in with a police act that has elements of the protection of my and your civil liberties. NSAS was as a result of the absence of the protection of those civil liberties within the act. The revised National Strategy 2019 is another very commendable act. The Counter-Terrorism Strategy 2016, also a very commendable act. The challenge, however, unfortunately, is in the implementation of those acts. So that's the area I would probably ask the Buhari administration to focus on. How do they transfer those beautiful policies into workable documents? So implementation framework for the various policies, the various laws, I think is the way to go. I just gave the example of the Police Act 2020. We were yet to see an implementation framework for that act. The revised National Strategy 2019, we are yet to see an implementation framework. The second challenge I think the administration has had over time is also the absence of what I would call a monitoring and evaluation framework within the security subsector. You asked Mr. Adesina several questions. You reeled out some statistics. Now, those are the kind of things I would expect to see if Nigerians would see any performance improvement in terms of security metrics that would tell us, for instance, kidnapping in 2020 was 100 in the Northwest, but by 2021, kidnapping has reduced to probably 15. So I'm hoping that going forward, the government would introduce those aspects. And then lastly, the issue of corruption. There is a lot of perception really that security is one blind area where auditing and other measures that will reduce corruption are completely lacking. So people see the security sector as a basket case where you drop money and then the money just whittles away whatever it's done with. So I'm hoping to see that measures will be introduced within the security sector that would provide some semblance of performance measurement that would allow us to gauge when monies are sunk into that sector, how are those monies being used?
Mr. Adamu, stay with us.
Controversial security fund.
Mr. Adamu,
nobody ever bothers to
if
ask
you can hear me, Mr.
Adamu, those monies being spent. We know that, as an example, security is in the
Mr. Adamu,
list.
I don't want us to lose trail of some of the points you're making, if you can hear me.
So those areas, I think, are areas that this government can improve upon.
Okay. Just a moment. Hang on, Mr. Adamu. Let me get Mr. Adesina's thoughts to some of the issues you have raised as we wind down on this particular segment. But add to that, really, because with the rescue of these boys, Kankara boys, the call for the rescuing of the Chibok girls, or Chibok ladies now, women as the case is, and Leah Sharibu has again come up. And the question a lot of Nigerians are putting to the president is, well, with this will that was shown in rescuing the Kankara boys, is the president still actively working towards the release of the Chibok girls and Leah Sharibu?
Thank you. If you have followed what the president had said over the years and the months about the balance of the Chibok girls and Leah Sharibu, he had always said, whatever it takes to get the remaining girls, government will do. In the early days of this administration, the president even said, if it means paying to get them back, he will pay. How else would he show his commitment to getting them back than that? But one thing we must not lose sight of is that Chibok happened under a previous administration. And what was generally agreed then was that there was some delay in tackling that abduction. So the trail was cold by the time government even woke up to the reality that there was an abduction.
But Mr. Adesina, when last did you hear the president?
There was Dapchi.
Mr. Adesina, just when last did you hear the president speak about trying to negotiate or at least anything about the Chibok girls or Leah Sharibu? Do you remember when last the president spoke about that?
It depends on if you are talking about his public statements or what he says to those of us that work with him. I know those of us that work with him, when talks go to that area, the president from time to time always says, whatever it takes to bring the balance, using his word now, he says, whatever it takes to bring the balance of these girls, the government will do.
Well, Mr. Femi Adesina, would like to thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us on the program, and we wish you the very best.
Thank you.